All right, my friends, I appreciate everybody joining me today. I am J.R. Dukes, your host. I'm here to have commentary because I am a firm believer that when you have a conversation among friends, among free minded, like minded individuals, I believe it puts an end to indoctrination and helps educate all of us so that we can make our own choices and we can make our own decisions, specifically, in this case, political decisions. Let's face it, there's a lot of indoctrination that's going on right now. There's a lot of nonsense out there all over the legacy media, all over the internet, including YouTube. And we have to shine a light on these so called facts, these so called events. It's really important that we make the proper choices because the choices we make today are frankly going to affect us the rest of our lives. The choices we make today are going to affect our children, our grandchildren, and so on. And right now in our country, we are in the middle of a battle for exactly what kind of life we're all going to live. Are we going to live in a woke world where there's boys and girls and other sexes? Are we going to live in a world where the government allows us to have our children at their pleasure? Where our children can be indoctrinated against our will by the school system because the government knows better than we? Or are we going to be able to raise our kids the way that God wants us to raise our children? It is just ludicrous, all of these rules, laws, and the way the government is impeding on our lives all the time. And it's really my sincere hope that when you come across my channel here, that if you find what I'm talking about to be of value, that you definitely will subscribe so you know when new content comes out. You'll hit the thumbs up button. I always encourage you most of all to share it with somebody you think might benefit from this channel's message. This channel is to help you, and that's what I'm here to do. Now, we are talking as usual all things Donald Trump. I'd like to know what's on your mind and what are you thinking. Please put them in the comments below. We're going to be having people join the conversation across different platforms. We are on Facebook right now. It looks like we are on Twitch and Twitter, or I guess what they call X at this point. So hello to my friends over on X. I wanted to start off with the obvious. Okay, so the other day, the great Supreme Court of the state of Colorado came out with a decision against Donald Trump. Now, let's take a look at this briefly here. I want to pull up one or two things here. So we have the Colorado Supreme Court, and they decided that they were going to go ahead and bar Donald Trump from the ballot. As of yesterday, we had a different type of decision with the same facts before the Michigan Supreme Court, and Donald Trump rightly so prevailed in that court. So let's go ahead and let's start looking through some of these and let's see what we can come up with here. This particular page is, let me make sure I get the correct source here because I don't want to misquote anything. I want to take this directly from foxnews.com. So, foxnews.com. And let's take a look at this first video and let's see how this
Supreme Court
works.
rejecting special counsel Jack Smith's request yesterday to fast-track arguments over whether former President Trump is immune from federal prosecution. Former Trump Attorney General Bill Barr weighed in on how this could affect Trump moving forward.
If he wins the presidency, he will be able to deal with these cases. They will not be a barrier to him continuing to serve as president.
For more on this, we're joined by former U.S. Attorney Guy Lewis. Thank you so much, Guy, for being with us. Just to start off, the sound you just heard from Bill Barr, does that sound to you like he is suggesting that Trump, if he were to win this election, could pardon himself, or is he simply saying that none of these cases will preclude him from holding office? What's your take?
So, Jackie, I think he's saying very clearly that, listen, these cases will not go forward under Trump. one way or the other, whether it's pardoning himself, whether it's granting himself immunity, whether it's firing Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, and saying these cases have no merit, whether it's reassigning the case to his own appointed attorney general. There'll be a lot of options where Trump can engage in the legal battle here and make these cases go away.
Of course, if Donald Trump wins the next election, he's going to simply make these cases go away, and that's exactly what he should be doing. These cases that are being brought against Donald Trump, these are not legitimate cases. This is not a prosecution. This is a persecution. He's being charged with these crimes by a weaponized Department of Justice, a weaponized group of friends in the, let's just call it the Democrat or liberal, whatever you want to call it, just the machine that they have is just insane, and it's being brought in a weaponized type of situation against Donald Trump. And that's just not fair. It's not fair for any of us. And let's just be honest about it. It is un-American. This is the kind of stuff they do in third world countries. It's sad. It's sad. And I'm hoping that cooler heads prevail and we make the right choices going forward, because this is the kind of thing that can definitely undermine and destroy a country, even a country as great as our country. And I really don't want to see that happen. I know you don't want to see that happen. It's really sad what's going on. And we're going to go ahead and continue with this video right here so that we can talk about it at the end. With the websites, it's not as easy to start them or stop them. They have to, I have to, unlike YouTube,
the Supreme Court rejecting special
it's not as easy to
Jack
control.
Smith's
So let's listen to it. Here we go.
Fast-track arguments over whether former President Trump is immune from federal prosecution. Former Trump Attorney General Bill Barr weighed in on how this could affect Trump moving forward.
If he wins the presidency, he will be able to deal with these cases. They will not be a barrier to him continuing to serve as president.
For more on this, we're joined by former U.S. Attorney Guy Lewis. Thank you so much, Guy, for being with us. Just to start off, the soundbite you just heard from Bill Barr, does that sound to you like he is suggesting that Trump, if he were to win this election, could pardon himself, or is he simply saying that none of these cases will preclude him from holding office? What's your take?
So, Jackie, I think he's saying very clearly that, listen, these cases will not go forward under Trump, one way or the other, whether it's pardoning himself, whether it's granting himself immunity, whether it's firing Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, and saying these cases have no merit, whether it's reassigning the case to his own appointed attorney general. There'll be a lot of options where Trump can engage in the legal battle here and make these cases go away.
So you assume then that his position assumes that Trump would win the election. I mean, what if he doesn't?
Great question. So look, I think Trump's strategy clearly is to drag all of these cases out, all of the indicted cases, all of the investigations out as long as he possibly can. That gives him more options. And indeed, you know what's ironic about this, Jackie, is every time he gets charged, what happens to his poll numbers? They seem to go up. So if I'm Trump, from a political standpoint, I keep dragging this thing out as long as I can.
What does it tell you that the decision didn't have any notable dissents? We didn't really get a breakdown, in what the sort of reasoning was behind it. What are we to take away from that?
That's right. So listen, if I'm Jack Smith, I'm in my office today licking my wounds. This is not, Jackie, how you want to play your first inning in front of the Supreme Court. You've gone in there, and if you read the underlying brief, what's so fascinating is it is dramatic. I mean, he basically tells the justices, this is critical, this is so important. He cites Richard Nixon and the tapes and how the court has to act and has to act now. Well, as far as we know, 7 justices looked at it and said, you know what? Not very persuasive to me. Not a good way to start the baseball game.
Is it an indication to you of how it would rule, you know, when it finally does reach the Supreme Court?
Well, that's the real question. I think there is some indication there. I think if they found his petition persuasive, then you would have seen some people come in and say, look, even though there may be 5 or 6 that say, hey, let it go the normal course, the regular course, a couple, 3 people might have dissented there and said, no, we need to take this up. We need to take it up now so this case can move forward. That didn't happen here.
Yeah. I also want to ask you about this effort in Colorado to remove Trump from the ballot there. This is not the only state where he's facing this kind of litigation. If you can look on our screen, I mean, you've got pending litigation in all the yellow, voluntary dismissal by the plaintiff in the darker green, dismissed in orange, pending appeal in the light green, and then Trump disqualified, obviously, in Colorado. What does this tell you just sort of about the legal landscape that Trump is going to face in the run-up to the election and how that could impact the election itself? I mean, not just take away for a moment, you know, how people will respond to this and vote, but, you know, legally speaking, does this represent a problem for him?
Well, I would normally I would say yes, it presents a problem, but for the fact every time he seems to encounter a legal obstacle, a legal problem, I mean, getting indicted, for example, by a federal grand jury would tend to, conventional wisdom would say, well, that's not very good. In Trump's case, he raises money off of it. His poll numbers seem to go up. And as one of the other candidates said a few days ago, he pulls all the oxygen out of the room as a result of this. So normally I'd say yes, not a good thing. But in this case, I think Trump's exploiting it. And I think you're going to see this through, I mean, I hate to say this, but you're going to see it through next year and into the summer and the fall, Jackie.
If there's anything that represents the biggest threat legally, you know, how do you sort of stack it up in your mind when you're, because there's a lot to look at. I mean, and unless you're really involved in following all of these, you know, cases and challenges and whatnot, your average person on the street might not be able to list off, you know, in order of importance, what the biggest problems are. How do you see it?
So I put at the bottom of the list the state cases out of Georgia and the one that he's involved in New York right now. I think those cases are weak. I don't think they're going to result in any movement on the needle. I was always thinking that the special counsel's cases would be the most difficult. They would go to trial the quickest. They're going to take him out of the election and out of the campaigning, the opportunities to campaign. But that said, geez, I just don't see anything knocking the guy down. It's almost like he's got Teflon, like the old mafia boss out of New York. The more you charge him, the stronger he gets.
Yeah, all right. Well, we will continue to watch all of this. Guy Lewis, really appreciate your time. Attorney General
I don't
Bill
particularly like the analogy he just gave pertaining to the Teflon situation because he's referring to John Gotti, if you remember, back in the 1990s, the leader of one of the mob families there. It is accurate in the sense that things fell off that guy and falls off Donald Trump, apparently, assuming that there's something to fall off there. But to carry his illustration further, the thing I don't like about it is eventually John Gotti was convicted of some serious crimes and ended up dying in prison. And of course, we don't want that to happen to our great president, Donald Trump. But I will accept his metaphor, and I pretty well agree with a lot of his conclusions. One thing I want to tell you that I want you to remember as far as life goes, and if you unfortunately ever find yourself in a legal situation or at the receiving end of a legal situation, whether it's civil or criminal. I had an attorney friend of mine many years ago taught me something, and it is this. Instead of an attorney at law, you really want an attorney at stall. So why would you want an attorney at stall? Well, it's just like this guy on FoxNews.com said. Donald Trump and his attorneys, they're trying to stall. That's the name of the game, especially in this persecution. Again, not prosecution, a persecution of Donald Trump. The more you can stall, generally speaking, the better off you are going to be. That's pretty well universally the truth. Justice delayed is justice denied. And of course, I'm assuming that we're looking in a situation that has a legitimate need for justice. The government, in this case, there's no legitimate anything against Donald Trump. What you have is you have Joe Biden and the Democrats and the liberals all together weaponizing the Department of Justice, our systems of justice, their friends, their colleagues, even on the state and local level, like the city of New York. You have an attorney general there, that Letitia James, actually, what is her name in New York? I think it is Letitia James. You can correct me if I'm wrong just by putting in the comments below, but you have a woman that ran on the platform to get Trump, to use the phrase coined by Alan Dershowitz, his book, Get Trump. Boom, there you are. That's what this has all been about. She ran on a platform saying, hey, I'm going to get this guy. It was profane laced. I'm going to do this to him. I'm going to do that to him. I'm going to take everything away from him. And of course, that's exactly what she's trying to do. And it's just outrageous. I can't believe in the United States of America we have to have conversations like this, that we have to sit down and actually process what's going on. I've seen things like this happen on a much smaller level in the business community. Basically, I see it in the situation to where you have some swamp creature, somebody that's a head of a department that doesn't like a particular individual or particular business, and they bring the weight of the federal and or state government upon an individual just because they don't like the person. The person did not pay the appropriate amount of campaign contributions. The person did not know the right people to basically kiss the rear end of. Or, frankly speaking, the swamp creature, if you will, got mad about something pertaining to a particular business, and they brought the full weight of the government against a particular company and or individuals. And in these situations, the company, the business is on the short end of that stick, as you can imagine. You know, the old expression when I was growing up was, you cannot fight City Hall. And for the most part, that is true. Now, obviously, Donald Trump is an extreme example of fighting City Hall and being able to hopefully win. He has a ton of money. He has a ton of power and a lot of people that are behind him and support him. The one good thing about all this happening is someone like Donald Trump sees how crooked our own justice system can be. It's, generally speaking, a good system, but it's got a lot of things it can improve on. And unfortunately, when you take something that is quote unquote good and you use it for something like evil, like the Biden administration is doing with the Department of Justice currently, it just has the capacity of destroying our only justice system, to bring down our own country that we all depend on for food, to take care of our families, take care of our friends. I believe it was Abraham Lincoln that said that the United States is the last best hope for mankind. And I echo those sentiments entirely. The United States takes care of the world. And to play politics, to have a power grab, to weaponize the government, to do anything and everything to make sure Donald Trump does not become president of the United States again is abhorrent. It's evil. It's wrong, and I don't like it. Frankly speaking, I did not like it when the Republicans were going after Hillary Clinton, lock her up, that type of stuff. I have to admit, it's kind of funny at the time. If you're in a campaign rally, it's cute. In reality, it's not cute. It's been pushed too far. Now, because the Bidens are in power, the Democrats are in power, the Republicans, specifically Donald Trump, is on the receiving end of this stuff, and it hurts. It's not a good thing. You can see how dangerous this is and what the potential is to undermine our entire society. That's the reason it's so important that we all have a conversation about this. We put our heads together, we inform our family and friends. So many people have been indoctrinated with just falsehoods. Just for example, take the January 6th stuff. I was not happy with everything that happened on that day, as you probably were not happy with it. However, when you take an analysis of everything and you look at it closely, it's very clear one of the proximate problems was Nancy Pelosi declined, stopped, would not allow 10,000 troops that were offered to her to police, patrol, and maintain the crowd. And when you have that many people that's charged up in a small area or just in any area, there is the potential for something to go wrong. And unfortunately, something did go wrong. And when you look at it, the only person killed was that poor woman that was going through a glass window that crazy lunatic Secret Service agent or whatever he was shot and killed. She wasn't armed. She was crawling through a glass window and he shot her dead. But you don't hear nothing about that. And by the way, this officer, this so-called Secret Service agent, this is the same guy, if my memory serves me correctly, that left his gun inside the bathroom at the White House or one of those federal buildings or the Congress, wherever it was. Do you remember some time ago, it was on the news that there was a gun found and then they linked it to an officer or whatever, but this is the same guy. I can assure you that if it was the Republicans that were in power at the time and someone got shot, there would be a major uprising. There would be a lot of problems going on. But I want to stay focused right now on exactly what's going on in Colorado and what's going on in Michigan pertaining to Donald Trump. And by the way, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comment bar. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen or below, depending on what kind of device that you're on. And give me some comments. Ask whatever questions you may or may not have. Or you can contact me later simply by sending me an email to reachjrdukes@gmail.com. I always love to hear from you, and it's my pleasure to have a conversation with you and to interact in any way that I could help you. So, moving on with what this guy was talking about pertaining to the state of Colorado, I have to agree with a lot of what he had to say. I really don't have nothing that would separate me, which is kind of unusual. This guy has it pretty well on mark. You have the Colorado Supreme Court basically taking away all of our rights to vote. Okay, me as a Florida resident, if the Colorado Supreme Court gets its way, one judge, because it was a split decision, you have 9 unelected Democratic Supreme Court judges of the state of Colorado that decided, and by the way, it was a split decision, so there were some Democrats there that used some common sense. They used a little bit of wisdom and knew that there is no way that the 14th Amendment applies to this particular case. At any rate, they, if successful, have taken away my right as a Florida citizen to vote for the man or woman that I want to see as the next president of the United States. Now, you might say, JR, how is it possible that a Colorado Supreme Court can take away my ability to vote for Donald Trump or any person I want to vote for? Well, Donald Trump's the focus of this, so I'm going to stick with Donald Trump. The way they take it away is as follows. If it's allowed to stand and they're allowed to keep Donald Trump off the ballot, then basically Donald Trump is disenfranchised from having all of those votes in the Republican primary to have the party's nomination so he can run for president of the United States again. And in this example, if he's not on the ballot for the Republican primary, if somehow he comes up short, and let's just say Colorado, unfortunately, let's just pretend it stands. Well, other states are going to follow, and they're already trying to follow right now, as was shown in the report we just watched. If he doesn't have enough delegates or ever how the Republicans do their primary system, well, he's not going to appear on the Florida ballot for president. There's going to be Joe Biden and somebody else to choose from. Basically, my ability to vote from Donald Trump was stopped by one judge. That's just unbelievable. In the United States of America, that a court, an unelected judge, thinks that they can take away my vote to vote for who I want to vote for. Let me ask you a question. Where do you think this type of behavior goes on? You probably think somewhere like El Salvador. And by the way, the president of El Salvador recently put a Twitter post or an X post saying pretty well what I just told you, that the United States no longer has the moral high ground to say, hey, you people need to run a fair and honest election. You people need to make sure your people have the right to vote for the person they want to see as their leader, as their president. And unfortunately, I have to agree with him. Let's look at the facts. And then I'm going to tell you a country that the United States is acting exactly like. So you have a state that said Donald Trump cannot appear on the ballot. So basically it's a judge or tribunal or whatever saying who the people can and can't vote for, right? Well, take a look at this next video and you tell me if you see any similarities. I'm going to go ahead and tell you what country it is. It's Russia. Yes, you heard it right. Russia. Can you believe that? Russia. And the leader there, of course, is Prime Minister Putin. The last guy, and you'll see him here in this video, that had the gall to run against him, he was almost killed. Remember on that airplane where the guy was like screaming in pain, oh, and it was a very eerie and unsettling video to listen to this guy wailing, screaming in pain. And by some miracle of God, this guy made it. I'm not sure how he made it, but he survived. And what is very unique about this is he went back to Russia. He said in published interviews he just felt pulled to go to Russia. That's his home country, of course, and help his people any way he can. Of course, when he got to Russia, he was promptly arrested, and we're going to talk about what happened to him in just 1 second. But this lady on your screen right here, she is Russia's Donald Trump. We'll just say that for the purposes of this illustration. So she is Russia's Donald Trump. She's an attractive young lady. She wants to help her country. She wants to help the people in Russia. Well, in Russia, you have to have permission to run. Let's see what happens to this young lady, and then you tell me if you see any correlation, if you see any similarity. So anyway, without further ado, let's take a quick look at this video. It's not very long anyways. Here we go.
A Russian anti-war former TV journalist has been disqualified from running against President Vladimir Putin in an election next March. Yekaterina Duntsova wanted to run on a platform to end the war in Ukraine and release political prisoners. Video from the Central Electoral Commission showed members voting unanimously to reject her candidacy on Saturday because of alleged flaws in her application to register. Putin's critics said it proved no one with genuine opposition views will be allowed to challenge him in the first presidential election since Russia invaded Ukraine last February. They see the vote as a fake process with only one possible outcome. Duntsova told reporters her team had trouble finding a lawyer to certify the bid after dozens declined. When she said last month she wanted to stand, commentators described her as crazy, brave, or part of a Kremlin-scripted plan to emulate a fair election. In this interview with Reuters in November, she said, "Any sane person taking this step would be afraid, but fear must not win." The Kremlin says Putin will win because he enjoys genuine support across society, with opinion poll ratings of around 80%. Completing another 6-year term would make him Russia's longest-serving ruler since the 18th century, surpassing even Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. Putin's best-known opponent, Alexei Navalny, is serving prison sentences totaling more than 30 years. His supporters say they don't know where he is, after they were told he'd been moved from his previous penal colony earlier this month.
Okay, there you go. You have you have a situation like I just described, and it's extremely. Let me get the right setup here on this here. You have a Russian lady. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her name, but let's go through this one more time and let's dissect it slowly. I want to make sure you get the exact parallels between her and exactly what's going on with Donald Trump. Listen, this is not even a close call. This is almost exact. It's uncanny to me just how exact this illustration is. I mean, come on. This is exactly what they do in Russia. And they're doing it here in the United States. And some of my Democratic friends, when I talk to them about this, it's like their minds are confused, or they just think somehow this is okay because it's Donald Trump and he's evil and he must be eliminated somehow. And I'm like, what? I said, if they're allowed to do it to him, they'll be allowed to do this in the future to anybody. I mean, come on. Donald Trump had his home raided by the FBI. If the FBI can raid a former president of the United States over some documents, come on. We have to call this for what it is. Let's dive into this video just a little more critical here.
Anti-war former TV journalist has been disqualified from running against President Vladimir Putin in an election next March. Yekaterina Duntsova wanted to run on a platform to end the war in Ukraine and release political prisoners.
Okay, so there she is. Like I said, she's an attractive young woman. She wants to go ahead and help her country. She is anti-Ukraine war, which most of us all are, and she is tired of seeing dead men, dead boys, dead soldiers, whatever they are, coming back home in body bags. She wants to make a difference.
Video from the Central Election.
Okay, what you're looking at there is the body, the governing agency that decides who can run for president in Russia, whether or not you meet the qualifications. Similar here in the United States, you do have to have paperwork and fill out paperwork, and I'm sure you pay a fee or whatever, but generally you're not scrutinized exactly the way she's being scrutinized. However, you're going to see what happens with this board.
The Electoral Commission showed members voting unanimously to reject her candidacy on Saturday because of alleged flaws in her application.
Okay, so her application, so basically her candidacy was rejected. Why? Her candidacy was rejected unanimously, 100%, for some make-believe reason. That's exactly like Donald Trump. You have unelected Democratic judges, the opposite party that Donald Trump is, of course, Donald Trump being a Republican, these judges all being appointed, unelected judges, and they, in their sole discretion, decided Donald Trump does not meet certain criteria, or more specifically, that Donald Trump is in violation of the 14th Amendment. And remember, Donald Trump does not even have a conviction for being an insurrectionist. And I'll use that in quotes. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump is not charged with insurrection in any form by any court as of right now. Even Jack Smith, who we'll talk about later, even Jack Smith, the guy that was appointed special counsel to look into the records issues down in, here actually in my state of Florida, and he is in Washington, D.C. all the time filing motions, and again, we'll get into that a little later. Even he did not file insurrection charges against Donald Trump because there's no evidence for him to be able to prove that type of charge. So you, on one hand, Donald Trump, the court said, hey, you can't run because we have decided you are an insurrectionist. However, there's no conviction for that, for being an insurrectionist. Same thing with this young lady. There's nothing against her as far as criminal anything. At least it's not reported as such. They just said there's some kind of flaw in the paperwork.
To register. Putin's critics said it proved no one with genuine opposition views will be allowed to challenge him in the first presidential election since Russia invaded Ukraine last February. They see the vote as a fake process with only one possible outcome.
Gee, think they see it as a fake election with only one possible outcome? You think? Maybe.
Duntsova told reporters her team had trouble finding a lawyer to certify the bid.
No doubt. Can you imagine that call? Oh, hi, sir. Yeah, I'm looking for a lawyer that can represent me. Sure. What would you like help with? Well, I would like to be the next president of Russia, and I want you to help me run against the dictator, Vladimir Putin. Yeah, you're right. The same guy that poisoned the guy that wanted to run against him last time. Oh, yeah, the same guy who currently now has been moved north of the Arctic Circle into another freezing prison out in the middle of nowhere where no one has access to him and is probably being tortured to death, if not frozen to death, daily. Yeah, can you help me out with that? I don't think I can. Click. Duh, of course she can't find an attorney.
After dozens declined. When she said last month she wanted to stand, commentators described her as crazy, brave, or part of a Kremlin-scripted plan to emulate.
See, I think I'm going to check crazy. I'll check brave. Maybe also check in the same.
A fair election.
Все понимают, что любой здравомыслящий человек,
In this interview with Reuters in November, she said, any sane person taking this step would be afraid, but fear must not
те
win.
люди, которые сегодня мне пишут и поддерживают,
The Kremlin says Putin will win because he enjoys genuine support across society, with opinion poll ratings of around 80%. Completing another 6-year term would make him Russia's longest-serving ruler since the 18th century, surpassing even Soviet leader.
Yeah, everybody around this man walks on eggshells. I can assure you of that. You cross this man, you're not going to live long. You're going to probably have an accident in your hotel room where you end up falling out of your balcony.
Joseph Stalin. Putin's best-known opponent, Alexei Navalny, is serving prison sentences totaling more than 30 years. His supporters say they don't know where he is, after they were told he'd been moved from his previous penal colony earlier this month.
Yeah, so over there in Russia, this guy that ran against Putin before, after he survived the poisoning, he went back to Russia. They put him in a prison approximately 30 miles east of Moscow, if my memory serves me correctly. They decided that was too close to Moscow. That was too close to his supporters. It was too close to the press. So they went ahead and they made another luxury accommodation for this guy north of the Arctic Circle, which is in Siberia, and trust me, it's cold, very cold there, and it is a notorious prison. I don't want to get off on this subject too much, but obviously this is exactly what they're trying to do to Donald Trump. 91 felony charges. They're trying to put Donald Trump literally in prison. So let's make sure we're clear here on the exact thing that I'm talking about. On one hand, you have Donald Trump trying to run for president in the United States, and he was barred from being allowed on the ballot in Colorado. In Russia, you have a young lady that wants to run against Vladimir Putin for president of Russia on the next election cycle, which I think is next year, and she was told no because of some rules she doesn't meet. Same thing with Donald Trump, same thing with her. Well, in Russia, the first guy that ran against Putin, he ended up barely surviving an assassination attempt, but as of right now, he's in prison, probably very tortured, very much so uncomfortable, to put it mildly, and they're trying to do the same thing here in America to Donald Trump. They are literally, I'm not making this up, think about it, they are trying to literally put him in a prison box. You have this corny Jack Smith, this guy that I was telling you about handling the records case. He has went to the Supreme Court and said, hey, we need to get this over with now, please, please, please. He kept telling them how important it was that they immediately take up this case and hear it right away. Well, he gave the Supreme Court every reason in the book other than to admit the reason he's prosecuting him right now, persecuting him right now, I should say, and he's in a rush to try it, is he wants to get this done before the presidential election. He never would make that admission in writing to the U.S. Supreme Court. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court basically gave a one-line unanimous decision that said, no way, no way. And they sent it back. Well, this special prosecutor is so mad and so upset now, he's filed another motion with the court there in the circuit, I guess it's the D.C. circuit that he's in, asking to essentially bar Donald Trump from talking and defending himself in this case. I'm not making this up. This is exactly what this lunatic did. I mean, they are so desperate to get Trump. They are so desperate to do something to bring him down because they know if he makes it on the ballot, and they know if Americans are able to choose between a old, elderly individual like Joe Biden versus an energetic, prosperous, forward-focused, strong leader, a conservative man, a man of values, a man who believes in our freedoms, they know what's going to happen, and they know Donald Trump will once again be elected as president of the United States, and that is scaring them to death. It is just something that their minds cannot handle. Hey, how do you see it? Tell me. You agree? Do you disagree? Put them in the comments below. I respond to all the comments as I get time. I just think what we're going through right now is extremely, extremely serious. It's very serious for our country. The good news here is every time they attack Donald Trump, every time they do these shenanigans by indicting him yet again, Donald Trump only grows stronger. Amen, brother. I'm glad to know this, and you should take comfort in knowing this. On one hand, it's good news for Donald Trump. On the other hand, man, I hope they cannot find a way to take him off the ballot. My opinion, looking into my crystal ball right here, I just don't see how they're going to actually be able to remove Donald Trump from the ballot. I don't see how they're going to be able to stop him. Their game is to keep him tied up in court, to have him convicted, to have him incarcerated, instead of allowing him to campaign and go around to spread his message directly to the American people. They are trying everything they can to, at a minimum, keep him tied in a courtroom. Because see, when there's an actual criminal trial, you don't have the option of keep campaigning while your criminal trial is going on, like he did with the New York case, with the New York Attorney General, as that civil case is being put on. These other cases are criminal cases, and Donald Trump is required to be there in person, which means he cannot be out on the campaign trail. That would be sad. That would be a serious problem, and I'm hoping that he's able to overcome that. We'll just have to wait and see. Time will tell, as they say, and all we can do is be prayerful about it. I encourage you to pray. I encourage you to go ahead and maybe send Donald Trump a support email or a support text, or get on Facebook or Instagram and say, hey, we support you, Mr. President, and we're praying for you and your family. Let me know what you think. If you're still with me, you might as well go ahead, hit the thumbs up button. Be sure to subscribe, like. If you subscribe, you'll know when my new content comes out. I'm always putting out new videos and new content. And as of right now, I've been very focused on the upcoming presidential election because it is so important for our country. It is so important for the future of all of us. And I hope you feel that same sense of urgency. We have to put a stop to all this indoctrination, all this crazy thinking that's going on. The world is a very dangerous place, and we need a capable, strong leader, a leader like Donald Trump. My friends, I appreciate you joining me today. I always tell you to keep that free mind and never give up. And until next time, my friends, I am J.R. Dukes.